What if I were to tell you that your voice is not just sound, but vibration, responsible for shaping the invisible architecture of reality? Every word you've ever spoken has left its mark upon the world. The air around you still carries the remnants of it. Sound doesn't disappear. It just travels outward until it becomes part of the ambient hum of existence. The ancients once referred to this creative force as the logos, the word, the sound that gives birth to form. Before there was matter, there was movement. Before movement, there was tone. Every culture, every sacred text begins its story with sound. The ancient Vedas spoke of Om, the seed syllable from which the cosmos unfolded. The Gospel of John began with the phrase, "In the beginning was the Word." The priests of Egypt said the god Ptah spoke the world into being. Each tradition described the same mystery in its own tongue. It is not a metaphor. It is a description of physics spoken in the language of myth. Sound is pattern made visible through vibration. When you speak, your words ripple through space as organized motion. They alter pressure, density, and flow. They pass through you first, shaping the geometry of your inner world before they reach anyone else. Your body is composed mostly of water. Every cell in you listens. When sound travels through that water, it forms patterns. This can be demonstrated through the science of cymatics, the study of how sound affects matter. When grains of sand or drops of liquid are exposed to pure frequencies, they reorganize themselves into intricate symmetrical shapes, circles, spirals, lattice. The higher the frequency, the more complex the pattern becomes. Change the tone, and the entire form shifts instantly. Now imagine your voice performing this same act within you every time you speak. Each word is a frequency. Each frequency shapes water. You sculpt your own inner landscape with sound. This is why ancient civilizations treated speech as sacred. In Egypt, in Sumer, in the high temples of Greece, words were understood as instruments of creation. To speak was to move energy through form. Priests were trained in resonance and silence before they were allowed to utter divine phrases. They knew that careless words disturbed harmony, that sound carried responsibility. Many ancient structures were designed as instruments of resonance. The king's chamber of the Great Pyramid produces standing waves that align with natural harmonics of the human voice. When sound is made inside it, the whole room hums like a living thing. Archaeologists once thought that this was coincidence. Acoustic analysis now shows it was deliberate. Those chambers were tuned like musical instruments, each designed to amplify particular frequencies. The voice was considered a key to transformation. In ancient Greece, philosophers spoke of the logos not just as speech, but as divine order itself. The logos was the rational structure that held the universe together. To live in alignment with the logos was to live in truth, to speak in harmony with the rhythm of existence. When the Pythagoreans studied music, they were not merely in search of harmony. They sought to decode the mathematics of the cosmos. This meant a belief that every planet, every atom, vibrated with its characteristic note, and that the voice could attune itself to this universal symphony. To speak with awareness means to take part consciously in creation. In modern science, the same principle has returned through a different language. We know that vibration underlies all matter. Every atom oscillates at a measurable frequency. The voice, when analyzed, is among the most complex patterns of vibration in nature. It carries microtones and harmonics beyond the range of most instruments. When measured, the human voice generates electromagnetic and acoustic signatures extending beyond the body. You are surrounded by a subtle field, a resonance that changes with your emotional state and intention. When you speak, your voice transmits that field. This is why tone can convey truth or deception, even when words do not. The voice is the bridge between inner coherence and outer expression. If you have ever felt calm when hearing someone speak in a soft manner, or uneasy when hearing an anger hidden behind politeness, you have felt the field of logos in motion. The voice conveys the state of consciousness behind the words. Take a moment and try this. Speak softly to yourself. A simple phrase, such as "I am here." Feel where the vibration lands in your body. Notice how the air moves against your lips. Feel the chest, the throat, the subtle hum that continues after the sound fades. That is resonance. That is the signature of your being interacting with the field around you. The ancient mystics believed that when words and breath were aligned with awareness, the logos would awaken within. This is not something to be believed. It is something to be experienced. It can be felt as warmth in the chest, or as quiet clarity in the mind. Some described it as the soundless sound, a vibration beneath all other vibrations. Modern neuroscience begins to glimpse this in studies of chanting and sound meditation. When people chant harmonically over sustained periods, their brain waves shift into synchronized patterns. The heart and breath fall into rhythm. The nervous system enters coherence. The voice reorganizes the body into harmony. The principle is simple: resonance creates order, and disorder dissolves in its presence. A single coherent tone can bring scattered particles into perfect symmetry. The same thing happens in consciousness. One word spoken from deep awareness can bring the mind into stillness. This is why silence was the first lesson in many schools of wisdom. To master the voice, one had to master stillness, because when the mind is still, the voice carries clarity. When the mind is restless, the voice carries noise. The secret of logos is not hidden in secret texts. It is hidden in everyday speech, in how you speak to yourself when no one is listening. The mind is one continuous act of creation through silent words. The tone of your inner dialogue is the tone of your life. When you say to yourself, "I can," or "I cannot," the universe responds in kind, not as magic, but as resonance. Your consciousness vibrates at the frequency of your belief, and the field around you aligns with it. You don't have to believe in mysticism to feel this. It's biology. The nervous system follows the rhythm of the breath. The breath follows the rhythm of the voice. When you speak with peace, your body calms. When you speak with anger, your body contracts. The words you choose teach your cells how to feel. In this way, language is a matter of self-instruction. The logos becomes your teacher. Every phrase is a signal to the body, to the brain, to the field that surrounds you. Over time, these vibrations sculpt your perception of the world. Ancient initiates realign the body's resonance with higher states of awareness through mantras and chants. Modern sound therapy does the same under a different name. Frequencies near the human voice's natural harmonics can alter the function of the vagus nerve, which regulates emotion, digestion, and immunity. It's not superstition. It's measurable. The mystics of Egypt, India, and Tibet knew that certain vowels carried the power to awaken dormant aspects of consciousness. They treated sound as medicine, the word as healing geometry, each syllable, each tone a key that could open or close the gates of perception. The misuse of the voice, when used without awareness, distorts harmony. Speech that is laced with fear, resentment, or judgment spreads the discord outward and creates a similar reaction within a person. The ancients said this was the true reason to guard the tongue. Words, once spoken, do not vanish. They go on shaping the field long after their echo fades. If logos is the creative force, then the silence is the womb out of which it is born. Both are necessary. Breath begets sound. Sound begets form. The cycle repeats endlessly. Creation is not an event in the distant past. It happens every time you inhale and exhale. Every word you speak participates in that unfolding. So tonight, as you listen to these reflections, notice your own breath. Notice the rhythm of your voice when you whisper to yourself in thought. Listen to the tone of your inner conversation. That tone is your instrument. It's ancient. It's sacred. It's yours. The ancients said that the world is woven from sound. Modern science agrees that vibration underlies all form. Your voice is the bridge between these truths. And perhaps, remembering this, you could start to speak, not just to communicate, but to create. The ancients did not separate voice from architecture, language from stone. They considered the spoken word a living force that required a vessel strong enough to hold its resonance. Temples, pyramids, and cathedrals were not built merely for worship. They were built to amplify sound. Every sacred structure hums when you speak within it. If you stand in the hypostyle hall of Karnak or beneath the dome of the Hagia Sophia, a whisper stretches and floats. The walls carry the tone as if the building itself is breathing with you. These designs were not accidents of beauty, but acts of acoustical engineering guided by spiritual understanding. The Egyptians considered sound to be the breath of the gods. For them, the act of creation came into being when the first principal atom spoke the names of the world into being. Each name carried power in the vibration of its essence. To name something was to call that thing into form. To mispronounce a name was to disturb that form. They were more than just the symbols for communication. Hieroglyphs were sacred geometry in visual form. Every line and curve in them reflect the frequencies produced by the spoken words they represented. The written and spoken language were two halves of one vibrational act. When a priest read an inscription aloud, he was completing the circuit between sound and shape. This understanding reached across civilizations. In ancient China, the Taoists spoke about the true tone, a harmonic sound that aligned human breath with the pulse of nature. In India, Sanskrit mantras were tuned to the subtle vibrations of the body's energy centers. Each vowel and consonant matched a particular frequency. Chanting them correctly was thought to restore balance and awaken memory of the eternal. Even the stones remember sound. In modern experiments, archaeologists have recorded low-frequency vibrations within ancient chambers that respond to particular tones. Some of these frequencies fall within the range of the human voice. It is as if the walls were tuned to interact with consciousness itself. Sound is not a fleeting phenomenon. It is vibration moving through medium. In caves, cathedrals, and temples, those vibrations can linger, bouncing and blending until they form standing waves. When humans speak or chant in such spaces, they join a field that already hums with energy. The sound of the voice merges with the sound of the earth. This was the mystery of the Logos made tangible. The voice was not a separate act, it was part of the ongoing song of the world. Precise study of this principle was done by the Greeks. Pythagoras spoke of the music of the spheres, the idea that planetary motion created a continuous, inaudible harmony. He taught that the same ratios governing musical intervals also govern the movements of the stars. To understand sound was to understand the structure of the cosmos. The Pythagoreans used monochords, simple strings stretched over wood, to measure the mathematics of vibration. They discovered that when the length of a string was halved, the pitch doubled. Harmony, they realized, was numerical. It followed proportion. The same geometry that produced beauty in sound produced stability in matter. Centuries later, Plato inherited this view and refined it into philosophy. He described the Logos as the bridge between the unchanging and the changing, between the divine idea and its material expression. Speech, then, was not just communication. It was participation in creation. Every sentence uttered was a small act of shaping the infinite into the finite. To speak the truth for Plato was to align one's voice with the eternal order. To speak falsehood was to fall out of harmony with that order. The consequence of this was not a moral one, but rather vibrational. There is discord in the soul created by discord in speech. In early Christianity, the Logos became a symbol of divine reason embodied in the world. The Gospel of John opens with words that echo across time. In the beginning was the Word. That phrase carries layers of meaning often missed. In Greek, word is logos, and it also means structure, logic, or pattern. It is not sound alone. It is the architecture of thought that precedes sound. To say that the Logos was with God, and was God, is to say that creation itself is the articulation of divine order. When you speak with awareness, you echo that act. You become a microcosm of the cosmic word. It is back to this idea that modern science circles in, from a very different perspective. Now, physicists know that the universe is not a static container, but a sea of oscillating fields. Every atom is a pattern of vibration, held in balance by invisible waves. At its most minuscule scale, matter is sound made solid. In quantum theory, observation influences vibration. consciousness and measurement are intertwined. Though the language differs from ancient metaphors, the insight is the same. Awareness and resonance shape reality together. This convergence between old and new is not coincidence. The ancients expressed truth in poetry and in symbol. We express it in mathematics and in experiment. Both are describing the same invisible structure. Both are languages of the Logos. Now, consider the wonder of the human voice. It is a marvel of design. Air coming from the lungs creates pressure on the folds of the larynx, which vibrate hundreds of times per second. Those vibrations then pass into resonant chambers in the throat, mouth, and skull, where the shape of the tongue and movements of the lips sculpt the frequency into meaning. When recorded and analyzed, your voice reveals your emotional state, stress level, and even health. The tone changes with fatigue or joy. It reflects coherence or confusion. This is why ancient healers could diagnose by listening. They heard the imbalance before it became visible. The voice, when used intentionally, becomes a tool of alignment. A chant, a prayer, even a simple breath, sound can recenter the nervous system. Through slow repetition, the chaotic patterns of thought dissolve into rhythm. The body relaxes. The mind becomes still. Silence follows sound as the ocean follows the wave. After the vibration fades, awareness remains. This awareness is the gateway through which transformation enters. There is a forgotten practice among certain monastic traditions known as toning. It is not singing and not chanting. It is the art of holding a vowel sound gently, allowing it to rise and fall with the breath. Each tone is sustained until it dissolves into quiet. Over time, practitioners report that the silence after the tone becomes louder than the tone itself. They describe it as hearing the hum of the universe. The Egyptians called that hum the sound of the stars. The Tibetans call it the soundless sound. In both cases, it represents the field of resonance underlying all manifestation. The human voice can touch that field, and in doing so, the boundary between self and cosmos softens. You begin to sense that the words you speak are not isolated. They ripple through the same fabric that holds galaxies. This is not a belief. It is physics wrapped in awareness. Imagine, if you will, that every thought is a seed of sound waiting to take form. Voiced aloud, it vibrates through your surroundings, interacting with air, water, and consciousness itself. The universe responds not to the surface meaning of the words, but to their frequency, their coherence. This is a reason intention is more than articulation. One phrase, spoken from love, will always carry more power than 1,000 words spoken without presence. Logos doesn't measure vocabulary. It measures vibration. The ancient teachers knew this. They trained their students to listen before they spoke, to breathe before they replied, to let the sound arise from silence rather than from habit. And in so doing, they discovered that speech could heal. That one single tone uttered in harmony calms storms within the heart. In modern therapy, sound healing and voice resonance techniques echo these practices. Instruments such as singing bowls, tuning forks, and overtone chanting are used to restore coherence in the body. What the ancients felt, science confirms. Frequency changes biology. Cells respond to vibration. DNA vibrates like a coiled string, reacting to acoustic energy. Speaking with clarity and calm, that energy becomes medicine. It travels outward through the field of air, then inward through the field of self. In time, it changes perception. To understand Logos means to remember one thing. Language is not just a means of communication. It's a mirror of consciousness. Your words are the reflection of your current resonance. When you change your tone, the frequency of the mirror shifts, and what you see in the world shifts too. This does not mean the voice alone changes external events. It means that awareness, expressed through voice, changes the pattern of how those events are perceived and experienced. The observer and the observed are entwined in vibration. The mystery of Logos is not about control. It is about coherence. When the inner tone matches the tone of truth, harmony follows. Life arranges itself in alignment with that frequency. So as you listen now, You might begin to sense the subtle vibration beneath these words, the pause between phrases, the resonance that lingers after the sound fades. That stillness is part of the message. The voice carries information, while the silence carries meaning. Together, they form the living language of creation. You have always spoken it. Perhaps now, you are remembering. When the ancients spoke of the Logos, they weren't talking about metaphor. They were referring to an operating principle in the universe, a hidden architecture moving unseen through air, water, and consciousness. For them, sound wasn't something that would entertain. It was the breath that stitched the spirit into form. This same knowing echoed across the sands of Egypt, the plains of Sumer, and the peaks of Tibet in different languages. What they knew was that creation hums, that existence itself is vibration slowed into visibility. There are stones that remember this truth. In the temples of Luxor, carvings show priests holding instruments to their lips. These were not musical in the modern sense. They were tools for measuring resonance. Each note vibrated in relation to the stars above and the pulse of the Nile below. The priests believed that by aligning those tones, heaven and earth could be kept in harmony with each other. The ritual of voice was a balancing act. When a civilization forgot the right tones, dissonance followed, crops failed, floods came. People forgot their place in the song. Some of these ancient tones still exist, though not in full. A few frequencies recorded inside the Great Pyramid reveal deep, pure hums that match resonant frequencies of the human body. When a single vowel is sung within those chambers, the sound lingers, folding into itself. The listener feels it not only in the ear but in the bones. This was sacred technology. The human voice, amplified through geometry, became the bridge between the dimensions. Sound and structure met in perfect cooperation. The pyramid itself was an instrument, and the priest was its musician. In those times, words were not spoken carelessly. They were sculpted breath, every syllable chosen like a brush stroke upon eternity. There were schools dedicated entirely to this practice. The priesthood of Thoth taught the art of controlled resonance, the shaping of thought through vibration. Thoth, with the head of an ibis, was more than the god of writing. He personified ordered sound. His hieroglyph had the meaning of divine articulation. He was described as having written the words which formed reality itself. His voice brought light into darkness. Every time a scribe recited his hymns, the ancient idea repeated: speech is creation, breath is life. To speak without awareness was to scatter energy into chaos. To speak with intention was to become a co-creator. For those who read old texts closely, patterns emerge. The word of power that emerges across cultures always ties to alignment. It was never about commanding nature, but joining it. The incantations were not spells in the modern sense. They were sound codes tuned to frequencies in the natural world. Consider the Sanskrit Om. Its vibration, when chanted slowly, resonates across the chest and skull. Modern measurements show it aligns with the alpha brainwave range, inducing calm and coherence. The ancients did not need instruments to know this. They felt it. They understood that peace was not a thought but a vibration. But the Tibetans took this even further. They built horns taller than a man, designed to produce a single earth-deep note. When blown across valleys, that sound rolled 4 miles. Monks described how the mountains seemed to answer. The vibration returned, like an echo of recognition. It is said that at those moments, silence itself vibrated. In the West, the tradition evolved differently. The Greeks turned sound into philosophy. They sought to understand the Logos through reason and proportion. Yet even their music reflected the same cosmic harmony. Their instruments followed mathematical scales derived from planetary motion. When they spoke of virtue, they spoke of tuning the soul. The Greek word virtue originally meant excellence of form. To live virtuously was to live harmoniously. The well-tuned lyre produced clear sound. The well-tuned life produced clarity of mind. Pythagoras, who heard the music of the spheres, taught that every living being vibrates with a particular frequency. When human beings moved in step with the rhythm of nature, their sound was harmonious. When in conflict with it, the sound became dissonant. sickness, perplexity, and hopelessness were not punishments, but indications of vibrational dissonance. The voice was the tool to restore order. One would get back into the flow by humming, singing, or speaking rhythmically. For Pythagoras, the logos was the pattern behind all sound and all existence. The Romans inherited the word, but not the depth. Over time, logos became a concept of logic, bereft of vibration. The mystical pulse was forgotten. Language became a system of meaning, rather than a living resonance. Yet even in forgotten layers, traces remained. Early Christian mystics wrote of speaking prayers not to request but to align. They described prayer as vibrating the word. The name of God was not meant to be said, it was meant to be felt. Modern science has managed to catch fragments of this with its instruments and formulas. Cymatics, which is the study of visible patterns of sound, shows that vibration shapes matter directly. Fine sand on a metal plate, vibrated by sound, will arrange the particles into intricate geometric patterns. Change the frequency, and the geometry changes instantly. The ancients did not have metal plates. They had water, sand, and clay. When they noticed sound shaping these materials, they understood the same principle that governed creation itself. The logos was not a symbol. It was literal vibration shaping form. This may explain why so many sacred languages emphasize sound over meaning. In Hebrew, each letter carries a numerical and vibrational value. When spoken together, they form frequencies meant to harmonize the speaker with divine law. In the Egyptian tongue, the same was true. The phonetics were keys to resonance. These frequencies resonate in the human body. The chest cavity resonates with lower tones, while the skull amplifies higher ones. Even the fluids in the body respond to sound waves. This is not metaphor. Medical imaging shows how vocalization can alter circulation and cellular movement. The ancients knew this through experience. To them, the body was a temple, the voice its living flame. When a person spoke in truth, their vibration aligned with the field of life itself. Lying, the resonance faltered. Their body reflected the disharmony, as did their mind and environment. Some isolated monasteries required their initiates not to speak for years. It was a tuning. When the inner vibration fell silent, then and only then could the outer voice carry power. When they spoke finally, a single tone shook the chamber walls. To hear such a thing, they would say, was to hear the soul of the mountain. Notably, there is a slight parallel to modern-day discoveries in quantum physics. Every atom vibrates. These are interdependent vibrations. Observation changes vibration. Consciousness and frequency dance in a continuous loop. When one's awareness changes, so does the rhythm of the body and the environment. This is what the spiritual texts mean when they say that the Word was with God. The Word is the awareness vibrating within creation. It's consciousness speaking to itself through every particle of matter. To discover this again, one has to learn to listen in a different way, not with the ears, but with the whole body. Every instant has its tone. Every thought carries pitch. When the tone of one's awareness resonates in harmony with the present, time appears to slow. The world feels fluid. Creation becomes participatory. In this state, the spoken word assumes an ancient power once again. No longer does it divide experience along the grid of true or false. It unites them as vibration. The logos is heard as the underlying hum beneath all opposites. You might notice this hum in quiet moments, when the wind passes through leaves, when rain meets stone, when your breath softens in stillness. The same resonance flows through all of it. Perhaps that's why some phrases seem to never die. They resonate on a frequency close to that hum. Poets and mystics have touched it, and their words continue to live for centuries on end. When you speak from that same place, your words carry the same echo. In the old mystery schools, initiates were told, the word is alive. Speak only when you are awake. This was not moral guidance. It was energetic discipline. Every sound shaped reality. Every phrase built or dissolved worlds within the speaker's field. Today, the teaching still survives quietly, in meditation halls, in choirs, in the breath between thoughts. The Logos has not vanished, but waits in silence for awareness to remember how to listen. When you speak next, perhaps pause for a heartbeat. Feel the air gather in your lungs, the sound forming before it leaves. You are doing, in that instant, what the ancients believed only gods could do, shaping reality through resonance. The secret of the Logos has not been forbidden by law, it has been hidden by noise. But beneath all that noise, the hum endures. And if you listen long enough, you might hear the truth whispered through it, the same truth that Thoth, Pythagoras, and so many others carried through time. It means that the sound is one with creation, and the echo is your voice. Imagine for a moment the earliest humans gathered around firelight. There were no words as we know them yet. There were only sounds, calls, murmurs, rhythmic pulses of the throat. Those first sounds were not communication alone, they were communion. They bound the tribe into one breathing organism. As one person hummed, another felt it in the bones. When a child cried, the whole circle stirred. The voice became the bridge between isolation and belonging. Through those vibrations, something greater than information passed through. It was the first hint that sound could shape emotion and matter alike. Tens of thousands of years old bone flutes, which archaeologists have found, show their holes carved in mathematical spacing that still matches the intervals of modern scales. That would suggest that even then, humans intuitively related sound with order. When a note vibrated purely, it created harmony not only in the ear, but in the nervous system. With time, this understanding deepened. Shamans and healers across continents found the human voice could change consciousness. They sang to the sick, chanted to the skies, whispered to the soil. These were not mere performances, they were precise tonal interactions with nature itself. It wasn't that the healers imposed a change, they invited coherence. Every landscape produced its own music. The open desert called for long vowels that floated on wind. Forest tribes used short bursts of rhythm to echo the life around them. Coastal peoples sang in waves, their chants rising and falling with the tide. Through generations, these sounds became the language of the earth itself. Then, as civilizations rose, the voice remained sacred. The Hebrews thought creation began with a word. The Hindus taught the universe was sung into being. The Egyptians said the gods spoke reality through their names. In all these stories, voice was not metaphor, it was mechanism. Modern research now uncovers what those myths cloaked in verse. Frequency gives matter shape. In labs today, scientists observe droplets of water change shape, the response to the tones of sound. One drop forms a perfect six-pointed star under just the right tone, but loses it when the tone is off. It ripples out into a spiral. The sounds don't describe form, they become form. Consider what this means for language. Every word you speak is not only meaning but vibration. The human ear may hear only the movement of air, yet the molecules of your body, the air around you, and even the subtle electromagnetic field of your heart respond instantly. The listener's body unconsciously adjusts to the vibration you emit. It is the forgotten power of the Logos. Your words are not symbols floating above reality, they are reality in motion. The understanding was carefully guarded by ancient teachers, who knew that careless words could scatter energy as easily as focused ones could build it. In the initiation schools, it was first taught to the students how to listen. When they could hear the silence behind all sound, they were permitted to speak sacred syllables. Speech was an offering, not a reflex. The Temple of Hathor at Dendra still holds reliefs showing sound as spirals flowing from the mouths of gods. These spirals resemble the waveforms modern physicists use to illustrate vibration. Thousands of years before oscilloscopes, the Egyptians carved the same pattern into stone. They knew that the spoken word carried both power and consequence. Every letter of their script corresponded with a sound. Each sound corresponded to an element of nature. When combined, those letters produced harmonies believed to summon forces from the unseen. Not superstition, but recognition of a universal language woven through vibration. In ancient Greece, philosophers carried this wisdom into thought. Heraclitus wrote that all things come into being through the Logos. He did not mean language alone. He meant the pattern which orders chaos. To live according to the Logos was to live in harmony with the structure of reality itself. Centuries later, Christian mystics echoed that insight. In the beginning was the Word. If treated only as doctrine, the phrase loses its depth. In its original context, it describes an ongoing process. Creation continues every moment through sound, through intention, through consciousness expressing itself. Science, though careful with its language, now brushes against the same boundary. Quantum physicists notice that matter behaves differently when measured. The mere act of observation alters outcome. Attention becomes a form of participation. If awareness can change matter, and sound is the externalized form of awareness, then every voice is a creative force. The difference lies in coherence. A scattered mind produces scattered vibration. A centered mind produces resonance. It is from this principle that we understand why some voices bring comfort, whereas others agitate. More than personality or content, the nervous system recognizes coherence. A soft voice entrains the heartbeat of a listener, softens muscles, and steadies breathing. A harsh voice does the opposite. Both times, the world is responding. Now, imagine this extending beyond conversation. The words you speak to yourself, the silent phrases repeating beneath thought, those, too, carry vibration. The body listens, cells follow instruction. When you say, "I am tired," your biology adjusts. When you whisper, "I am alive," your chemistry changes. This is not mystical exaggeration. Studies in psychoneuroimmunology demonstrate that positive verbal affirmation can influence immune response and stress hormones. The ancient invocations of I am align precisely with these findings. The phrase is a tuning fork for identity. In ancient temples, initiates began each ritual with the declaration, I am, not to inflate the ego, but to remind the self of its origin in consciousness. The declaration aligned personal vibration with universal rhythm. To say, I am, was to step into resonance with creation itself, even in the structure of human anatomy. This is reflected. The vocal cords sit at the crossing of breath and heart, between the intellect above and the visceral power below. Quite literally, the voice is the meeting place of thought and feeling. When the two align, the spoken word takes power. When they are at odds, sound becomes noise. The universe is like an ocean of vibration. Every voice sends ripples through it. Most ripples fade quickly, but when intent and coherence merge, the ripples reinforce one another to create standing waves that persist. That's how influence works at subtle levels. That's how words can linger long after they are spoken. You might have had that feeling when you were listening to a chant, or a hymn, or some simple truth spoken with sincerity. The words hang in the air well after silence has resumed. The Logos is acting in that instant. Reality bends ever so slightly around coherence. The human race has been building structures since the beginning of time to amplify this effect. Cathedrals with their high-flying arches, stone circles aligned to the solstices, and those caves that echo perfectly, all designed to magnify voice. Not just places of worship, but resonant instruments through which humanity could converse with the cosmos. When archaeologists measure these sites, they often uncover acoustic precision beyond modern assumption. Certain frequencies sustain effortlessly. The architecture itself becomes a harmonic partner. A whisper in the right spot multiplies into a chorus. The builders understood that space and sound are inseparable. Today, this knowledge endures in faint forms, in the way we feel uplifted by music that matches our mood, in the way a lullaby soothes a child, though they do not understand the words, in the shiver which runs through the spine when a voice speaks truth. These are modern echoes of the ancient Logos. To work with it consciously, one needs to begin where all creation begins, in listening. Find the still point before speech. Hear the rhythm of your own breathing. Notice how air moves through you. When the voice finally emerges, let it be shaped not by urgency, but by presence. A single vowel, sung with awareness, can change perception. The sound reverberates through tissue and bone to realign the scattered energies. Some traditions use this simple act as meditation, others as healing. Always it returns the speaker to coherence. The logos does not demand belief, it responds to attention. The more awareness one brings to sound, the more transparent reality becomes. What seems solid begins to shimmer as vibration. What feels separate reveals its rhythm. As you speak, consider what you are shaping, not just in others, but in the invisible architecture of your being. Words spoken in anger imprint chaos. Words spoken in gratitude restore harmony. The universe mirrors both. Every civilization that understood this used language parsimoniously. They taught that silence is half of the logos. Without stillness, sound loses clarity. Without space, resonance cannot form. To live in tune with creation is to balance the two. The quiet and the word, the breath and the tone, the listening and the speaking. This is the heart of the forbidden secret. Not that your voice can command reality, but that it participates in it. You are never separate from the creative process. Each sound you utter joins the eternal conversation that began before time. In the next part, we will step gently from philosophy into the present. We will explore how this forgotten science of resonance moves through modern life, how our cities, our technologies, even our private thoughts continue to echo with the power of the logos, and how, by remembering to speak with awareness, we can realign our world with harmony once again. There is a story told quietly among those studying the ancient sciences of sound. It says that in the beginning, everything was silent. Then the silence began to listen to itself. That act of listening produced the first vibration. From that vibration came light. From light came matter. From matter came thought. And from thought, the echo of the original tone continued in every living thing. Whether that story is myth or metaphor hardly matters. It carries a truth that science now begins to glimpse. Every particle vibrates. Every atom hums with a faint song of existence. You are not a collection of separate parts, but a symphony playing itself into being, moment by moment. When you speak, you become a conductor of that symphony. Your words are not just carried by air. They ripple through the electromagnetic fields of your body, into the air around you, into the minds of those who hear, and leave patterns in the invisible fabric of reality. With today's instruments, modern science can detect the subtle effect of sound waves on matter. Cymatics is the study of the visible effects of vibration. It shows us that the application of a simple tone can produce intricate patterns in dust or liquid. Changing the frequency changes the pattern instantaneously. These images are not illustrations. They are the language of vibration itself. What is remarkable is how these patterns resemble sacred symbols from cultures separated by oceans and centuries. The Sri Yantra, the flower of life, spirals carved into stone at Newgrange, and even the hexagonal geometry of snowflakes are all produced in the visualization of sound frequencies. The ancients were not decorating their temples. They were describing what they heard in meditation. Perhaps this is why in so many traditions, the word was more than a tool. It was a bridge between the visible and the invisible. The Egyptians spoke of Heka, the creative utterance that could realign the world. The Greeks used logos to mean both reason and divine speech. The Hindus still chant Om, said to be the vibration that sustains the universe. All are reflections of one awareness. Reality listens. We forget this today, since we live in a world full of noise, voices spilling from machines, words rushing across screens faster than thought can follow. We have multiplied speech but lost presence. The logos is not lost. It is only buried under our constant distraction. It is found again only in stillness. Before the first word of power, the ancients practiced silence. They waited until they could feel the vibration of their own breath in the chest, until they could hear the pulse of blood as a rhythm of the earth. Only then did they speak. The difference between ordinary language and sacred sound lies in awareness. The words themselves may be simple: peace, light, truth, but when spoken with full attention, they vibrate through the body like a struck bell. The air around them becomes organized. The listener feels their resonance before they register their meaning. This is not superstition, it's physics. The coherence of a signal determines its reach. A disordered signal disperses, a coherent one travels far. In the same way, a centered mind gives voice to words that carry clarity. A scattered mind breaks the pattern. The Logos responds only to coherence. You may feel this in your own life. There are times when your voice falters, when you speak and it seems no one hears. And there are times when you whisper a single sentence and the room changes. The difference is not volume, it's alignment. Every sound you make begins within. The vocal cords are only the final instrument. The true origin is thought. Before you utter a word, you are already vibrating on the frequency of what you are about to say. That's why self-awareness is so important. First, you have to change your state if you want to change your speech. The ancient initiates train this with simple exercises, starting with breath, slowly expanding the lungs, feeling air move across the throat, humming softly, not to make music, but to feel resonance inside the chest and skull. Gradually, they learn to direct vibration through the body, tuning themselves like instruments. Modern science confirms that humming activates the vagus nerve, calming the heart and regulating emotion. The body relaxes, the brain synchronizes, focus sharpens. Words have weight in this calm state. The Logos begins to move through you not as effort, but as flow. In the temples of Egypt and Greece, the highest teachings were never written. They were sung. The tones themselves carried knowledge. Students memorized rhythm and pitch and pause rather than instruction. Repetition rewired understanding through vibration. Sound became teacher. Our ancestors knew truth must be felt, not just understood. And today, neuroscience shows that the body registers emotional resonance before intellectual meaning. The heart registers tone and rhythm in milliseconds, a long time before the brain processes the meaning of words. The body always hears the Logos first. The moment you start speaking with awareness, small transformations can happen. Your voice steadies, conversations clear up, conflict softens, even your inner dialogue changes texture. The words I can begin to replace I cannot, I will replaces I might. These are not affirmations in the superficial sense. These are frequencies reshaping neural pathways, just as sound reshapes matter. The more you practice, the more you hear the subtle harmony beneath all things. The wind in trees becomes an orchestra of breath. The hum of a refrigerator becomes an overtone in the great symphony of vibration. Silence itself reveals rhythm. You realize the universe is not static, it is singing. And in that realization comes humility. The forbidden secret of the Logos was never that humans could command reality. It was that they were already participants in its unfolding. Every thought, every word, every sound lends itself to the ongoing act of creation. If this power feels immense, it should, but it is not meant to intimidate. Rather, it's meant to awaken responsibility. To know that speech shapes the world is to speak with care. To realize that silence shapes it too is to listen deeply. It is in this balance that wisdom lies. Next time when you say I am, stop. Feel the vibration in your chest. Feel how the sound expands into the room. It is the simplest phrase, yet it contains the full mystery of existence. You declare being itself. You affirm presence. You become the echo of the first vibration, the one which listened to itself and became light. As this understanding deepens, you may begin to see how everything responds. Plants grow stronger with kind words spoken to them. Water forms more coherent structures after prayers. Even your health improves once the internal dialogue begins to soften. The Logos is everywhere, waiting for alignment. Language is a sacred technology, not because it commands anything, but because it harmonizes. The universe doesn't obey. It collaborates. It listens for resonance. And when you speak from clarity and compassion, it responds like a perfect mirror. It's why so many spiritual traditions complete prayers with Om, Aho. Also it is. Each is a closing tone, sealing vibration into form. The ancients knew that sound completes the circle between intention and manifestation. You can practice it every day. Breathe before you speak. Feel your center. Let the words arise naturally, as if the universe itself were speaking through you. And when the silence follows, do not rush to fill it. Let it resonate. The echo carries further than the sound. With time, you may find that reality bends most gently, not in dramatic displays, but in subtle harmonies that align with your voice. Life begins to answer in the same tone you give it. Conversations open more easily, paths clear. The world hums in response to your coherence. This is the actual meaning of the Logos, not a secret of the priests or hidden in ancient stone. It's a living principle of creation, occurring in every breath that you take and every sound that you make. The forbidden knowledge was never forbidden at all. It was simply forgotten in the noise. So let your breathing slow tonight as you listen. Let the sound of your own name settle softly on your tongue. Feel how the air moves, how your chest expands, how your voice hums quietly beneath it all. You are hearing the universe speak itself through you. You are the instrument and the song. I thank you for sharing this space, for listening, and for remembering the old harmony that still lives in your voice. If this journey has brought you a moment of stillness or wonder, take a moment to subscribe so you can return when the next story calls. And before you rest, let me know where you are listening from tonight. It is beautiful to imagine the circle of voices spread across the world, each breathing softly, each vibrating gently with the same timeless sound. Good night.